The cold, endless expanse of space stretched out beyond the observation windows of the sprawling station. Orbiting a barren, lifeless world, the station itself was a relic of a once great civilization, humanity's final outpost in the galaxy. Dr. Elias Forge, the last surviving human, sat alone in his lab, the silence of his surroundings broken only by the soft hum of machinery. His eyes, once filled with hope and ambition, now reflected only the weight of loss. A scientist by nature, Elias had never imagined that he would be the last of his kind. The extinction of humanity had come swiftly, and with it, the fall of Earth. Yet, Elias was still alive, surrounded by the ruins of a world that no longer existed. Elias had turned the station into his sanctuary, a place to study, to think, to try to understand the alien technology that now seemed to define his existence. For years, he had been obsessed with the HFY cradle, an artifact he had discovered deep within a derelict Zika ship. The artifact was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Shaped like an organic crystal, it pulsed with a strange energy that resonated with Elias's own technology. The Zika, the insectoid empire responsible for humanity's downfall, had killed everyone on Earth. They were telepathic, efficient, and cruel, a species that saw humans as little more than pests. But Elias wasn't like the others. While many of his fellow survivors had succumbed to despair, he had chosen to fight in his own way. By studying the HFY cradle, he believed he might unlock the key to humanity's survival. If he could understand the technology of the Zika, perhaps he could find a way to stop them, or at least keep their hold over the galaxy from tightening any further. There had to be a way, he told himself. Humanity wasn't meant to vanish like this. The very thought of it gnawed at him every day. His research had brought him little progress, though. The artifact remained a mystery, an alien enigma that refused to yield its secrets. There were countless data logs and transmissions he had examined, but nothing that truly explained what the cradle was or why it existed in the first place. Most of the time, Elias felt like he was chasing shadows, like the answer was just out of reach. Then, one fateful day, something changed. It began as a faint hum, a flicker on one of his terminal screens. Elias had grown used to the station's various glitches. After all, the station had been abandoned for years. But this felt different. The artifact, which had been dormant for so long, was pulsing more intensely than ever before. The readings were erratic, almost as if the cradle was alive, trying to communicate. Elias's heart raced as he focused on the data. He quickly began to trace the fluctuations, trying to understand the cause. His hands flew over the keyboard, running diagnostic checks and cross-referencing with his previous findings. Something was happening, something he had never expected. The cradle was no longer just an object to be studied. It was now reaching out, responding to something. And then, without warning, an encrypted message appeared on his screen. It wasn't from the Zika. It wasn't even human. Elias froze as he read the words on the screen. It was an alien message, unlike anything he had encountered before. At first, the language was incomprehensible, a series of symbols and strange glyphs that made no sense. But the message was persistent, repeating itself in a rhythmic pattern, as if it were trying to break through to him. Finally, after what felt like hours, a portion of the message decrypted. The message continued to unfold, and Elias felt his stomach twist. It was from an alien queen, Thera, of a species he had never heard of. She described herself as a ruler of a rival insectoid race. The Zika, she claimed, were planning to exterminate all intelligent life in the galaxy, starting with humanity. The destruction of Earth had been part of a larger, more insidious plan. The Zika weren't just conquerors. They were trying to wipe out any species that might one day challenge their dominance. Elias's mind raced as he processed the words. Thara's plea for help struck a chord with him, but the implications were enormous. The Zika had killed humanity, but now an alien queen from a rival species was asking for his help? Why? Could she be trusted? Or was this some elaborate trap, another layer of the Zika's manipulation? The message contained coordinates, a location on a remote planet, far from the reach of Zika control. Thara promised that if Elias came, she would reveal the truth behind the cradle and show him how it could be used to fight back. But Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had spent years researching alien technology, but nothing had ever seemed this personal. Why was Thera reaching out to him specifically? Was there something more to her story? His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the coordinates on his screen. The decision before him felt impossible. He was the last human alive. What could he possibly do to save humanity now? Was there even hope left, or had it all been lost when Earth fell? Elias knew one thing for sure. His next steps would determine not just his future, but the future of all sentient life in the galaxy. Meeting this alien queen, if he chose to do so, could mean his death. Or worse, it could lead him into a deeper conflict than he could ever imagine. The weight of the choice pressed down on him. For the first time in years, Elias felt something stir inside him, a flicker of hope, a spark of something greater than survival. Perhaps the cradle held more than just the potential to understand alien technology. Perhaps it could unlock a future he had never dared to dream of. With a final glance at the empty station around him, Elias made his decision. He would follow the coordinates. And in doing so, he would take the first step into a galaxy of unknowns, with no idea what dangers or revelations lay ahead. Elias had expected the journey to the remote planet to be straightforward, or at least predictable. But as he approached the coordinates Thera had provided, his plans began to unravel in ways he had never anticipated. It all started with the cradle. After his decision to follow Thera's message, Elias returned to his station, determined to make sense of the alien artifact. He needed to understand it before he could even think about meeting the Queen. But when he tried to continue his research, something went wrong. The energy pulses from the X of her cradle became erratic, more intense than before. At first, Elias thought it was just a malfunction, perhaps the artifact had finally reached its limits. But as the cradle's resonance built to an unbearable level, strange symbols flickered across his terminal screen, symbols that didn't match any known language in his database. They seemed to pulse in time with the cradle's frequency, as if the two were communicating in some incomprehensible way. He felt a growing sense of unease. Something wasn't right. The artifact, once an object of curiosity, now felt like a dangerous force that he couldn't control. Then, things took an even stranger turn. His station, which had been quiet and unchanging for years, began to malfunction in ways Elias had never seen. First, the lights flickered intermittently, then entire systems went offline without explanation. The station's communication systems became scrambled, broadcasting fragmented messages that Elias could barely understand. One moment, a simple repair drone would function perfectly, and the next, it would suddenly turn off, its circuits fried without any logical cause. As the anomalies increased, it was clear that something or someone was sabotaging the station. Elias was no stranger to the dangers of the Zyka. Their telepathic abilities made them unpredictable, able to manipulate machines and people with ease. He'd always assumed the Zyka's influence was far-reaching, but he never imagined they could have infiltrated his station after humanity's fall. Yet, the evidence was right in front of him. These malfunctions, these inexplicable events, they had a pattern, one that hinted at something deliberate. As Elias worked to investigate the cause, he discovered something even more unsettling. During a routine scan, he found an anomaly deep within the station's hull, an alien presence. Something organic, not human, was embedded within the station's core. Upon further analysis, he realized the truth. Someone had planted a hidden agent, a foreign organism, inside the station long before humanity's downfall. It had been silently feeding off the station's systems, manipulating them in ways Elias could only begin to understand. It wasn't just a malfunction. Someone or something was working against him. At first, Elias considered that it could be a leftover Zyka agent, but as he dug deeper, a horrifying realization set in. The presence within the station didn't match anything Zyka-related. It was too subtle, too intelligent in its design. This wasn't just sabotage, this was a deep, calculated infiltration. And it was clear now that someone had been working against him long before he'd even made contact with Thera. It didn't take long for Elias to realize the truth. The sabotage wasn't random. It was part of something much bigger. Despite his growing fears, Elias knew he couldn't ignore the coordinates Thera had given him. His curiosity about the mysterious queen and her offer to help him decipher the Zyka technology was too strong to resist. But now, the weight of his decision felt even heavier. What was Thera really after? Was she truly the ally she claimed to be, or was she part of this grand conspiracy? With no other viable options left, Elias set course for the distant planet. As his shuttle descended into the alien atmosphere, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. Yet, part of him couldn't help but be drawn to the mystery of the Queen. He had to see it through, had to know if she could be trusted. When he finally landed, he was greeted not by an army of warriors or a hostile environment, but by an eerie calm. The planet was barren, with a landscape that seemed both alien and familiar. It was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the hum of the world beneath his feet. And then he saw her. Thera was standing in the distance, her presence commanding. She was everything Elias had imagined, and yet nothing like he'd expected. At first glance, she was terrifying, her insectoid features almost regal in their alien beauty. Her wings, translucent and shimmering, glinted in the light, while her compound eyes glowed with an intelligence that seemed almost human. She was both terrifying and captivating, a paradox that Elias couldn't quite reconcile. "Welcome, Dr. Elias Forge," she spoke, her voice soft but filled with an authority that echoed in the still air. There was a sense of power in her tone, but also something more, something vulnerable. "I know what you must be thinking," she continued, "that I am no different from the Zyka, that I've come to manipulate you. But you must understand, we are not the same." Thera went on to explain the history of her people, the species she led, a race that had been at war with the Zyka for millennia. The Zyka, she claimed, had manipulated the entire galactic power structure, using false flags and orchestrated wars among alien races to expand their reach and control. They had destroyed Earth, not because of humanity's strength, but because of the threat it posed to their empire. Her goal was simple: to stop the Zyka from annihilating all sentient life in the galaxy. She had uncovered a piece of ancient Zyka technology, something far more powerful than anything Elias had ever seen. She needed his help to understand it, to harness it, and to turn the tide of war in her favor. But as she spoke, Elias felt a nagging sense of doubt. There was something off about her words. The Queen's offer sounded too good to be true, and the more he listened, the more he realized something was wrong. Thera, despite her intelligence and apparent sincerity, was hiding something critical. As their conversation deepened, Elias began to see the cracks in her story. Thera's manipulation was subtle, woven into the fabric of every word she spoke. She wasn't just offering a partnership, she was using Elias, leveraging his knowledge and skills for her own ends. Her true goal wasn't to save humanity, at least, not in the way Elias had hoped. No. Elias was caught in a web of shifting allegiances. He had come seeking an ally, someone who could help him avenge humanity, but now he found himself questioning whether Thera was really the savior she claimed to be. She had manipulated him from the start, and he wasn't sure whether he could trust her anymore. His emotions were torn. The humanity he had once fought for now seemed distant, almost irrelevant in the face of this larger galactic conflict. Should he ally himself with the Queen, embracing the uncertain future she offered, or was he just another pawn in a game far beyond his understanding? As the days wore on, Elias found himself trapped in a moral and intellectual maze. He had come to fight for humanity's future, but now he was faced with the uncomfortable truth that his understanding of what was right and wrong had shifted. Thera's words haunted him, and the more he learned about the Zyka, the more he questioned humanity's place in the galaxy. Had they ever truly been a noble species, or had their downfall been inevitable? And if Thera succeeded in overthrowing the Zyka, what kind of future would humanity have in the aftermath? The deeper Elias dug, the more uncertain he became. The galaxy was a far more complex place than he had ever imagined, and now, with no clear path ahead, he was left to confront the consequences of his choices. The truth, when it finally came to light, hit Elias harder than he could have imagined. For weeks, he had worked alongside Thera, trying to understand the alien technology that could help her overthrow the Zyka. But it wasn't just about the technology anymore. It wasn't just about revenge for humanity's extinction. It was about a much bigger, much deeper conflict, one that had been brewing for millennia. The discovery came when they cracked open the final layers of encrypted data hidden within the HFY cradle, a mysterious ancient artifact. At first, Elias had thought the cradle was merely a tool, a key to unlocking powerful technologies that could help him understand the Zyka and perhaps even defeat them. But what they uncovered was far more shocking. The cradle wasn't just a piece of Zyka technology, it was a test, a mechanism designed to measure and manipulate the evolution of species across the galaxy. The Zyka had been using devices like the cradle for eons to control the development of civilizations, guiding them toward self-destruction or stagnation. The Zyka's empire thrived by ensuring that no species could ever rival them, keeping them in a constant state of dominance. They engineered civilizations to implode in cycles, erasing threats before they could arise. But humanity, Elias realized, had been different. The Zyka had seen humans as an existential threat, not because of their numbers or military might, but because of humanity's unprecedented capacity to evolve. Faster than any other species in the galaxy, humans could adapt both biologically and technologically at a rate that terrified the Zyka. What they hadn't anticipated, however, was that the HFY cradle could be the catalyst for humanity's rapid evolution into something far greater. A species that could potentially rival the Zyka, both in intellect and power. Elias felt the weight of the revelation settle like a stone in his chest. The Zyka hadn't destroyed humanity just out of cruelty. They hadn't wiped out Earth because humans were a minor obstacle in their path. No, humanity's extinction was a calculated measure to prevent a future that could threaten the very foundation of the Zyka Empire. This revelation forced Elias to confront an uncomfortable truth. The destruction of humanity wasn't the end of a species, but the beginning of something else entirely. The HFY cradle, he realized, held the key to unlocking humanity's true potential, enabling humans to evolve into a galactic species, a power capable of challenging the Zyka. It was an opportunity that had been denied to them for millennia, but now Elias had the chance to unlock it. But with that opportunity came a choice. An impossible choice. Wythera, sensing the shift in Elias, approached him one evening in the dimly lit chamber where the cradle rested. Her wings shimmered in the low light, her presence as commanding as ever. But there was something different about her now, something almost vulnerable in the way she looked at him. "You have the power to change everything now, Elias," she said, her voice low and steady. "You understand the potential of the cradle. You understand what humanity could become. Together, we can push your species forward into a new future, one where you can stand beside me, alongside my people. The Zyka will never be able to stop us. Together, we will reshape the galaxy." Elias felt the pull of her words, the promise of something greater, something that had been taken from humanity long ago. The idea of evolving beyond human limitations was intoxicating. He had always wanted a legacy, something to prove that humanity's extinction hadn't been in vain. But then Wythera made an offer that shook him to his core. "I can help you," she said. "I can use the cradle to enhance your mind, to unlock your full potential. You would no longer be merely human. You would become a bridge between humanity and the galaxy, a being of both worlds. You could lead humanity into this new era, and in return, you will leave behind your human identity. You will become something greater than yourself, something that can never return to what you were before." The words lingered in the air like poison. Elias had thought about this possibility, the chance to rise above his limitations, to transcend the painful memories of his past and the aching loneliness of being the last human. But the reality of what Wythera was offering him now felt like a dagger to his heart. To accept her offer meant abandoning everything that made him human. His memories, his emotions, his very sense of self would be erased, replaced by something new, something alien. He would be a being of immense power, but in doing so, he would lose everything he had once fought for. The choice wasn't just intellectual, it was deeply emotional and psychological. The loneliness that had driven Elias all these years, the desire for a legacy, the need for revenge against the Zyka, all of it collided within him. He had fought for humanity's future, but now he wondered if humanity's legacy was worth saving at all. Was humanity's attachment to the past its flaws, its mistakes what had kept him from evolving into something better? Was his need for a human legacy a form of weakness, something that was holding him back from the future he could create? Elias thought about his life, about Earth, about the people he had lost. The pain was still fresh, a scar that wouldn't heal. He thought about the Zyka, about the cruelty they had inflicted, and about the possibility of turning that pain into something greater. Could he truly lead humanity into a new future, one where they weren't bound by the mistakes of the past? But could he do it without sacrificing his humanity? Was the future of humanity worth creating if it meant losing what had made him human in the first place? As the days wore on, Elias found himself lost in his thoughts, torn between the future, why Thera promised, and the past he couldn't forget. He realized, with a deep, crushing clarity, that the choice before him wasn't just about survival or revenge, it was about identity, about who he was and who he could become. Was he willing to abandon everything that made him human to build a new future, or would he remain tethered to the past, fighting to preserve a legacy that might no longer matter in the grand scheme of the galaxy? In the end, Elias knew that the answer wasn't simple. The future he faced wasn't just uncertain, it was terrifying. The path forward was unclear, and yet the weight of his decision was heavier than anything he had ever imagined. He stood at the crossroads, his mind and heart torn between two impossible futures. The decision had been made. Elias, standing at the precipice of an unknown future, chose to accept Thera's offer not because of the allure of power, but because of the belief that humanity's future depended on change. For years, Elias had clung to the idea of preserving humanity, of holding on to the last remnants of a species doomed to extinction. But deep down, he knew the galaxy would never move forward unless humanity adapted, unless it evolved into something far greater than its flawed past. As the transformation began, Elias was filled with an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. The HFY cradle pulsed with energy, the alien machine surrounding him like a living entity, its tendrils weaving around his body and mind. He could feel his very cells rearranging, shifting, expanding into something foreign. The world around him blurred, the familiar sounds of his space station fading into silence as the cradle took control. First, there was pain. His body felt like it was being torn apart, only to be reassembled. His thoughts, once sharp and singular, became fragmented, no longer his own. His memories, the precious fragments of his past, slipped through his mind like grains of sand in a desert storm. Faces from Earth, the faces of the people he had lost, began to fade into shadows. The weight of their absence, which had defined his existence for so long, became a distant echo. His emotions, too, dulled. The raw grief he had carried for years, the anger, the hunger for revenge, all of it began to dissipate. Elias fought against it, desperately trying to hold on to his humanity. But the deeper he descended into the transformation, the man he had been, the last human, driven by the desire to avenge his species, was slipping away. He wasn't just changing physically, his very identity was being rewritten. He was becoming something new, something far beyond human, but at a terrible cost. In the final moments of his transformation, Elias felt the last vestiges of his humanity fade, leaving him a being neither fully human nor fully alien. He was something in between, his mind sharp and capable of processing vast amounts of information, his intellect vastly enhanced, but his emotions, his connections to the past, had all but disappeared. He was no longer Elias Forge, the scientist who had once sought to save humanity. He was something else entirely. His body, once fragile and bound by human limitations, was now sleek and powerful, almost alien in its grace. His senses were heightened, and he could feel the ebb and flow of energy around him, the pulse of the galaxy itself vibrating through his new form. He could feel the deep hum of the stars, the pulse of distant worlds, and it was exhilarating. Yet, as he looked into the reflective surface of the cradle, he saw only an unfamiliar face staring back at him. The man he had been was gone, and in his place stood a being born of both human intellect and alien capability. It was then that he uncovered the final, terrifying truth. The Zyka hadn't exterminated humanity because they feared humans as rivals. No, They had destroyed humanity because they feared what humans could become. The Zyka had known that humans were different, that humanity had the potential to evolve into a species that could overthrow their empire, just as the HFY cradle had enabled Elias to transcend his human limitations. The Zyka's true fear wasn't that humans would rise up in their current form, but that, with time, humanity could become a species capable of challenging the very foundation of the Zyka Empire. Elias had been the key to that evolution, and the Zyka had known it long before he had. But the revelation didn't end there. As Elias grappled with this newfound knowledge, he felt the stirrings of something far older, far more insidious, lurking in the shadows of the galaxy, a force so ancient and powerful that it had manipulated both the Zyka and humanity for eons. This force had been playing both sides, twisting the fate of civilizations, pushing them toward destruction and rebirth in an endless cycle. The Zyka were not the true enemy, they were just another pawn in a game much larger than any of them could comprehend. Elias now understood the full scope of his transformation. He wasn't just a product of the HFY cradle. He was a piece in this ancient, intergalactic game. And yet, with this new power, he held the potential to break free from it, to change the course of the galaxy's future. He stood at a crossroads once again, but this time, the choice wasn't just about revenge or survival. It was about the future of all sentient life. Should he stop the transformation, abandoning the power he now possessed, and become a bridge between the existing species, offering a future where cooperation and coexistence were possible? Or should he embrace the immense power he now held and use it to reshape the galaxy, becoming something entirely new, a force that could challenge the Zyka and any other force that sought to manipulate the fate of civilizations? Elias's mind raced with the possibilities, but in his heart, he knew that both paths came with their own sacrifices. If he stopped the transformation, he would be rejecting the very future he had once hoped for, one where humanity could rise to its true potential. But if he embraced it, he risked losing the last remnants of his humanity, becoming a godlike figure in the galaxy, but one who would forever be removed from the species he had once sought to protect. As he stood on the edge of this unimaginable choice, Elias couldn't help but wonder, was humanity's true potential something to be feared or something to be embraced? Had his species truly been destined for greatness, or was their destructive path merely the result of their inherent flaws? Would the galaxy's future truly lie in the hands of a new species, or would the cycle of evolution and destruction continue forever, with humanity's legacy nothing more than a forgotten echo in the vast expanse of time? The question lingered in his mind, an unanswered riddle in the silence of the stars. Whatever choice he made, the galaxy would never be the same again. And neither would he.